Most people know that if you throw a Valkyrie camera in a plant just like this, it'll break the plant. To get around this, all you have to do is bounce a Valkyrie camera off of another one, which is my first tip. If you bounce it off of the other cam, it hides in the plant without actually breaking the plant, so it stays hidden, while still providing a lot of information at the same time. Now that was just one out of 101 different tips that I'll be going over in today's video. The second of which being that if you're going to put Kapkan traps down, make sure you barricade the door you're putting it down on first. Not only does this hide you and hide the sound of you putting the Kapkan traps down more, but once you unbarricade it, leaves this sliver of barricade behind on the door. That sliver of barricade hides your Kapkan traps a little bit better, so the attacker can't even see them when they're clearly right there. Moving it to the attack, did you know that gridlock tracks have the exact same travel path as drones? As you can see, they landed in the exact same spot. My fourth tip is if you're playing Buck and you know they're going on the lowest site possible for cafe, in this instance it would be kitchen, instead of just bucking open a soft floor like this to get vert onto the kitchen, what you can do instead is buck open the first floor, and then you can buck open the second floor. And as long as you're ADS, this is very easy to do. You can do it pretty quickly. As you can see, 1, 2, boom, you have vert, right? And you can do this in a lot of different places. This is called multi-level vert, and it's something that Buck specializes in, so you should start doing it more often. Speaking of destroying soft walls, that's what you should be doing as Mira. As Mira, this is what the normal view from your Mira looks like. But if you were to go in front of your Mira and destroy the soft wall portion around your Mira, now it's much easier to see around your Mira. So you need to start destroying the soft wall on your windows. As many of you know, Year 9 just came out, and so did a lot of updates. One of the many updates is that now if you have an LMG, your movement speed is much slower. Which brings me into my next tip. On LMGs, you want to be equipping the horizontal grip, because this will increase your operator movement speed, which was firstly decreased by the fact that you were running an LMG. So this should bring you back to normal and make you feel like you're not being slowed down by the gun that you're using. If you run Flash Hider or maybe even one of the 1x scopes, controlling the recoil becomes a lot easier, so you're not having to worry about which grip you run as much either. Another tip you need to start using in Year 9 is putting your air jabs higher. If you put an air jab on the flank, let's say right here, all a defender has to do is slowly walk up to that air jab and shoot it. And if you do that, the air jab won't see you and it won't go off, making Nomad completely useless for flanks. If you want to counter this, all you have to do is put your air jab much higher. Now, if they want to crouch and shoot that air jab, it becomes a lot harder. As you can see, I can't move my crosshair up any more further than I already am. And even if I found a way to be able to do that, I still would get caught up by the air jab before it was able to see me, just because of how perspective on air jabs work. Another tip with Nomad is you can make air jabs completely silent. Let's say I want an air jab on that flank again. If I want to make it silent, all I have to do is go on the opposite side of this soft wall, and then I can just punch a hole in the soft wall right here. Once this hole is here, I can shoot my air jab inside of the hole just like that. And now when I walk by it, it's completely silent, as you can hear. But make no mistake, this air jab will still fully work, and air jab anybody who walks past it, so it's a great and better way to use Nomad than just putting it above walls like this. Another tip you need for Oregon is this Azami runout tip for Classroom. Now this works anywhere that you have a vaultable surface next to a window. All you have to do is break the window. Once they see you put in a zombie barricade here, they won't expect you to run out from it. They'll expect to hear you actually knife it a few times, and then they'll be ready to look at it and wait for you to run out. But you can completely counteract this. To do this, all you need to do is put your zombie barricade back up, then hop on top of a vaultable surface right next to your barricade. If you vault or drop down next to a zombie barricade, it will actually completely break the zombie barricade like this. Now, because like I said, attackers are expecting it to be meleeed or shot, they're not going to expect it to be immediately broken. Which means if you have an attacker repelled right here, you will catch him by surprise 9 times out of 10 doing this for a free kill. Something else that can be free kills is the laser sight. Now, the issue with the laser sight is people on the attacking team, whenever you are defending, can see it, and then they'll know what position you're in. And this is why a lot of people do not like to use a laser sight. But there's a way that you can completely negate this effect. Instead of aiming exactly where you're aiming to reveal your laser sight, all you have to do is aim off of whatever you're going to swing off of. Now, my laser's on this door frame, so anybody inside of Trophy who's looking for my laser sight on the wall to see if I'm playing in this position called Bolo, they won't be able to see my laser because I'm aiming at the doorway here. And if someone swings me, all I have to do is quickly swing out and kill them. If I don't have the reaction time of somebody with 30 IQ, normally you're going going to get this kill 9 times out of 10, just like if you were slightly aimed at the doorway that they're actually peeking off of, which makes lasers and the biggest problems with lasers completely gone. Now that was just 10 out of 101 different tips in this video, so make sure you stick to the end because these get crazier and crazier as the video goes on. Moving on to my 11th tip, one thing that I mentioned earlier is that they nerfed the ability to put Valkyrie cameras inside of plants, and this goes for actual plant ornaments kind of like this. Now instead of hiding in the leaves, they'll just bounce off, but there's a way that you can get around this too. Instead of actually bouncing it on to the plant and its soil, you can literally just put it on the wall behind the leaves just like that. And now the Valkyrie camera is still hidden behind the leaves, but it still provides a great amount of information, and most attackers will not be able to see that camera, and if they do, they'll just think it's another leaf. So these Valkyrie cameras, in my experience, barely get found. Another tip I can give you as Valkyrie is if you see a light bulb, typically that is a great spot for a Valkyrie camera. For instance, this hanging light bulb right here with no fixture. If you throw a Valkyrie camera on this light bulb right here, it may look really obvious to you, but from an attacker's POV, if they don't know that's a Valkyrie camera, to them, that just looks like a light bulb. Using context clues as well, they see all this light around here, and they see the light coming from that space, so of course they're going to assume that that's the light bulb, and not a Valkyrie camera on top of a light bulb. Not to mention, the actual light drowns out the Valkyrie camera and makes it white, which makes it even more believable that that's not a Valkyrie camera. And because light bulbs are typically high up, these things make for exceptional information cameras as well because they can see the majority of the room that they're sitting in. So if you ever see a light bulb, it is usually a great place to hide a Valkyrie camera. Something else that's really good with information operators is pre-placed C4s. Which brings me into my 13th tip. If you're ever playing Pulse and you're trying to get a below nitro kill, you always want to pre-place your C4s. This makes it a lot easier for you to get a quickly timed kill, because if you see someone on your pulse scanner, you can easily get off and blow them up with a nitro. As opposed to seeing someone on your pulse scanner, pulling out your nitro cell, throwing onto the roof, and then blowing it up. That just takes way more time. Now you might be thinking, well, what if they don't push where your nitro cell is? Then you just wasted your nitro cell. Well, that's not true, because all you have to do is shoot the soft wall around your nitro cell, and eventually it will fall down. Just like that. And as long as you don't shoot multiple bullets in the exact same place, you won't break the soft floor above you, meaning they won't get a vert angle on you and you still get your nitro cell back. Now for a while, we've been talking about nothing but defender tips. So let's go over this attacking tip for Amaru. One thing that sucks about Amaru is they can easily hear your charge whenever you're actually, going through a hatch or going through a window, whatever it may be. So sometimes you'll just get shot the second you go in. To counter this, all you need to do, whether you're on a window or on a hatch, is throw a flash grenade through one of these holes first. Once you throw the flash grenade, it will blind anybody in the vicinity, allowing you to easily rappel in and get any free kills on people who are blinded or running away from the flash grenade, which can get you a lot of free kills and save your life 9 times out of 10. Speaking of secondary utility, not only are you using flashes wrong, but you're using smokes wrong. Let's say the site is basement, and I'm attacking and we have this wall open here. As Gridlock, someone else has the bomb and they're trying to go for a plant right here in the default spot. As Gridlock, if I'm smoking to cover my planter, should I smoke on top of the diffuser or my teammate's planting to cover him, or should I smoke close to the defenders, whether it be on this rotate or on this door? Well, the answer is that you want to smoke farthest away from you. If I were to smoke the actual planter, like let's say right here, this makes it to where if I'm a defender, it covers all of the lines of sight that are contesting me. So I can easily take all of this space right here, come up, and kill the person the second the smoke goes out, or just pre-fire them. My teammates doing this has actually gotten me killed whenever I'm trying to go for plants, so you never want to smoke close to whoever's planting. Instead, you want to smoke close to the defenders. So in this instance, I would smoke the doorway here or the rotate here. This makes it to where if a defender wants to run at the person who's planting, he's re-exposing himself to this angle and potential head holes here, which is dangerous for him, especially because if you're planting, chances are you have teammates covering you. So the farther away that you throw your smoke grenades and the closer you throw them to defenders, the better. Moving it back to the defense though, let's say I'm playing Cade and I'm trying to trick the plat wall 4cc. What makes tricking a wall a lot easier is instead of just reinforcing the wall off immediately, you want to create a hole on each reinforceable wall. This will destroy the soft wall that separates the attackers from the reinforcement, which makes sound travel a lot easier from them to you. This makes it to where once you actually reinforce these walls after you've made those 2 holes, if you're trying to trick this wall, it makes it a lot easier for you to hear where exactly and when exactly they're placing their breaching charge in order to K-trick the wall, turbo trick the wall, bayonet trick the wall, whatever you're trying to do. So make sure if you're trying to trick a wall, you put holes in the actual wall before you reinforce it. Speaking of making holes though, if you're ever trying to make head holes, you should make them slightly larger than usual. So instead of making head holes the size of, like, let's say that, whenever you're making head holes, make them the size of, let's say that. Slightly bigger than this hole on the left. This will give the appearance that they're just normal head holes. But you can also secretly use them as a rotate, and most attackers will not know this, allowing you to have rotate options they didn't know were possible, to get flanks they didn't know you could do. Another tip you need on the defense is if you're playing Melusi, never put Melusi Banshees in front of doorways like this. This Banshee might seem really good because it covers the red rotate and it covers the construction door. But if I'm an attacker and I know, like, hey, there's a guy on this red rotate right here that's gonna swing me the second this Banshee activates, all I'm going to do is walk in the doorway, quickly shoot the Banshee, and then get my crosshair back up to kill the guy when he swings me. And at full speed, it looks like this. Right? That's super easy, and it makes this piece of utility completely useless. A much better way to get use out of Melusi Banshees is putting the Banshee on the actual doorway just like this. So now, if they know there's a guy on the red rotate, in order to quickly shoot the Melusi Banshee and then quickly put their crosshair back on the guy who is here, they'd have to turn all the way around, shoot it, then turn all the way back around and shoot the rotate, which takes a lot more time and is a lot more dangerous because unless you're Bolo and you're able to flick to everything, that's just not going to happen and you're going to die. So making sure that you're putting Melusi Banshees as far out of sight as possible and out of their crosshair as possible is key to getting kills off of your Banshees. Another gadget you're using wrong is bulletproof cameras. One of the many weaknesses of bulletproof cameras is that all attackers have to do is shoot the sides of it, but you can completely negate this. To do this, all you have to do is reinforce a random wall. Then go to the other side of this reinforcement and destroy the soft wall of said reinforcement right here. Once you've done that, you can just stick your bulletproof camera on the reinforcement, and because the soft wall is right next to it, it's much harder to shoot the sides of that bulletproof camera than it were if it wasn't in the soft wall. And the smaller and smaller you make the actual hole to put your bulletproof camera in, the harder and harder it becomes to shoot the side of that bulletproof camera. Now, to celebrate the fact that you've made it to the 20th tip, I'm going to show you an insane angle on Cafe. To do this, make sure that you have the two red walls reinforced. This is for the third floor objective. Then, with a DMR or a shotgun, or really any gun that has good destruction, you can destroy just a sliver of the soft wall that is above these two reinforcements on the red wall. Now that you have this hole here, you have an insane angle that can watch the actual red hatch, so you can get some free kills on anyone who's trying to scope out the red stairs that doesn't know this angle exists. For our 21st tip, let's go over an operator that I guarantee you're playing wrong, which is Castle. Now let's pretend for a second that we're playing Tellers and Bathroom for the first floor site of Border. Instead of putting castle barricades anywhere on site, like the two windows there, the double door here, or the double door to Passport, what you want to do is use castle barricades to extend the site. One of the many weaknesses of Bathroom site is there's a lot of verticality that attackers can get for absolutely free. So a good strategy as Castle is to use his barricades to extend the bomb site and the area in which you're able to defend into Workshop. To do this, you can use castle barricades like this one right here, and this one on the single door here, to make it a lot safer for you to sit in Workshop. And now, instead of only being limited to the small bomb site here that's very vulnerable for reasons I stated earlier, you're now able to extend all the way into Workshop, which makes it a lot safer for you to play near the bomb site, which is how Castle is meant to be used. Not only can you use Castle to cover important angles, but you can use castle barricades, like this one here, to funnel attackers. Funneling attackers as Castle is simple. If they drone this out and say there's a castle barricade on the right, instead of wasting time, utility, and making noise to destroy this castle, they're instead just going to go left, or go straight. Now, because going straight is so dangerous, typically attackers will go left, but in case they go straight, you can always put a proximity alarm on this door. If they go to the left anyways, you can put a rotate right here. This will bait the attackers into thinking, oh, there's a free rotate I can use to take control. Let me go here. But what they don't know is that you'll be actually holding this rotate, baiting them, waiting for them to go into your crosshair. All because you just used one castle on this doorway. That is how you can use Castle to funnel attackers. Another operator that you're playing wrong is Tachanka. One of the main issues as Tachanka is that if you swing somebody to deploy your fire, you have a launcher in your hands, and you can't really shoot them back, which makes you vulnerable. But if you sit behind a shield, this problem no longer is an issue for you. Let's say someone is attacking you from the trophy door. Instead of just swinging this doorway here to put fire on the ground, what you can do is sit behind your shield and bounce it off the ceiling just like that, and now the fire is on the ground in the exact same place. Now, you're not exposing yourself to a dangerous angle, but also you make it to where you're still safe from potentially other angles as well, and you can keep spamming this fire, which makes it to where even though it's slow pulling at your launcher and putting away, that part doesn't even affect you as much. Not only this, but even if your shield gets destroyed, you can find other angles to bounce fire off of certain doorways in order to put fire in the exact same place. So as Tachanka, you never have to expose yourself, which takes away the biggest flaw in Tachanka's gameplay. Moving on to his Russian counterpart, let's talk about Kapkan. My tip with Kapkan is you never want to spread around your Kapkan traps to where you only have 1 to 2 Kapkan traps per doorway that you're putting Kapkan traps on. Now, you might be thinking that this is really good, because it increases the chance that someone will slip up and accidentally hit a Kapkan trap, and because you have Kapkan traps seemingly anywhere, if someone shoots a Kapkan trap or hits one, that'll give you information on anywhere that you'd need if you're actually roaming in a certain area. Now, this is true, but if you wanted a trap operator that give you information on where they'd push, you just play Legion. What separates Kapkan from Legion is the fact that Kapkan traps do a lot of damage, so you want to be stacking this damage as much as possible to get the most value out of this operator. So instead, put multiple Kapkan traps on top of each other. I'd recommend 2 at a time in places where you know they're going to fast push, and 3 at a time in places where you know that they're going to slow push. If people are slow pushing, they're typically more heavy armored people, which requires more Kapkan traps. And if they're fast pushing, they're typically people with less armor, which requires less Kapkan traps. Now, we talked about tricking walls earlier, but I have another tip for it. If you're specifically bandit tricking, make sure that when you're bandit tricking and you put down your initial bandits before you trick with your third one, that you put your bandit charges firstly on the outside of the wall, because as bandit, you'll be sitting on the inside, kind of like this. If you're sitting in the middle and you were instead to put your bandit batteries in the middle of the wall, not only are they susceptible to 1 singular EMP instead of 2, but also if you wanted to re-bandit a wall that got EMP'd, you have to walk around the other bandit and then place your bandit charge. Whereas instead, if it was on the outside, all you'd have to do is look down and place the bandit charge, which saves a lot of crucial time that can be used to keep a wall closed as opposed to it getting opened. Not only are you placing bandits wrong, but you're also placing Goyos wrong. You always want to be putting Goyos in places where you can easily shoot them without exposing yourself. For instance, if I were to put a Goyo on the left side of the door, this might seem like a good idea, because it makes it to where I can shoot it and the fire will go around and make it to where they can't walk in my door. The issue with this being is if I wanted to shoot that Goyo canister, I would have to cross the door and expose myself to anyone on this door, and maybe even take a gunfight just to shoot a canister. And you never want to put canisters in positions where you have to do that. Instead, either A, reposition to a place where you don't have to peek the door in order to activate it, or B, just put it in a position where you don't have to cross the door in the first place. This Goyo canister right here makes it to where I don't have to peek the door. I can just shoot it from absolute safety and make it to where I don't have to peek the Goyo canister and this do its job and waste time for me. Another defensive tip that you absolutely need is whenever you're trying to make rotates with a bailiff, instead of making rotates sitting still, which makes it a lot more hard to use, make rotates while you're moving. Because as you can see with the bailiff, when I'm moving, my crosshair gets wider the more I move, but when I sit still, it shrinks back down. The wider your crosshair is, the wider your pellet spread will be. To show you this, I'm going to show you one while I'm absolutely still, and then I'll show you a hole when I'm moving. This hole is a lot bigger than this hole. So whenever you're trying to make rotates, make sure that you're constantly moving whenever you're making them to make making rotates with bailiffs or any secondary shotgun for that matter way easier to make. Another tip I can give you with the bailiff specifically is if you're trying to open a hatch, there's a way that you can consistently one-shot the hatch every single time, just like that. To do this, all you need to do is stand diagonally towards the hatch, to where there's a corner facing you and facing away from you. You don't want it to look like a square, you want it to look like a diamond. Then make sure that you're moving constantly. I like to move in little circles, you can move side to side too, it doesn't really matter. But you want to get to a point where the top of your crosshair and the bottom of your crosshair line up with the top and bottom corners of the hatch while you're moving. So once you kind of line it up, you can shoot it just like that, and you'll one-shot the hatch perfectly every single time. Moving into the attack, someone who's super powerful right now is Ying. If you've ever played against Ying, she can seem really uncounterable. But there's a secret way that you can counter her that a lot of people seemingly don't know about, which is the simple fact that Whoa, whoa, whoa. Which is the simple fact that you can just shoot yin candelas, which will completely destroy them and make it to where they won't blind anybody. Not only does it work if it's stationary, like that, but even if they're rolling, you can just shoot them and they won't explode. So if you see a yin candela coming at you, don't move away and don't peek the person because you're afraid of getting blinded. Literally just shoot the yin candela and she's countered. The next attacker tip I'll give you is with zero. Have you ever wanted to put a zero camera down on a very specific wall, but you can't tell exactly with your crosshair which wall it's going to deploy on? Well, if you didn't know, with zero's crosshair, the crosshair changes depending on if you're looking at a soft wall or a hard wall. As you can see when I'm looking at a soft wall, there's an extra portion of a crosshair that appears on the very top as opposed to a hard wall. So now, let's say specifically that I want a zero camera on this soft wall right here inside of tellers. But I'm standing all the way back here. Well, all I would have to do is look directly and look at where my crosshair is and what it's doing. Now I see that third little triangle at the top, so I can shoot my zero camera and know exactly where it's going to go every single time. A tip for another ability is Wamai's ability, and this tip is that you never want to place your Wamai discs close to each other like this. Anything that gets caught by a Wamai disc that is explosive will explode at the end of the Wamai disc animation. Which means that if this disc were to catch a frag grenade, once it catches it, that frag grenade would explode, which would explode this Wamai disc. So you essentially just wasted another Wamai disc for no reason. But if you still want to put two Wamai discs on this door, instead of putting one in the top right and one in the bottom left to protect yourself from whenever you're playing behind the bomb chassis, it makes more sense to keep one Wamai disc on the door and then put one, let's say, like on this wall here. That way, this will still cover the radius of the door, but it won't explode the other Wamai disc that's sitting right here. Or if you have like a rotate on this wall, you can put it maybe, let's say, on the window, if they're grenading from the window, and then this Wamai disc will still cover this window. So you're adding like multiple layers of depth with your Wamai disc throws. That way that you're not exploding Wamai discs on each other. Now let's move over to coastline, because for my 30-second tip, a lot of people didn't know that there's vents on coastline right here that you can easily use to send drones down just like this. If you're playing Flores and you see that they have a shield right here or any Azamis inside of Hookah, this is a great place to have a Flores drone enter from. Not only this, but if you see any utility that's bulletproof at the bottom of the staircase or even a player, you can also throw a grenade down there just as easily as well. Not only is there one right here too, but there's also one over here that leads directly into Aqua down the hatch just like this. Not only is there that one, but there's also one over here that leads to White Stairs, and there's one over here that leads into the Hall of Fame Hall. So make sure that you're trying to use these as much as possible. Another attacking tip is if you're playing Thatcher and you're trying to help your hard breach get a wall open, you should delay your EMPs more. Let's say this wall is electrified, and I have an ace who's about to throw his ace charges on, but I know for a fact that they arcade tricking. I'd throw my first EMP, and instead of immediately throwing my second one, I'll wait for it to explode, wait a few seconds after that, and then I'd throw it. This is because it delays as much time as possible due to the fact that as soon as my first one explodes, they're probably going to throw a Cade Claw on the wall immediately after. And instead of just disabling it the second after the other one goes off, I'm going to delay and throw that second EMP charge a little later to waste as much time as possible for my ace to get the wall open. Now, if they have a bandit trigger, you might actually want to decrease the amount of time that you're throwing your EMPs, but for a Cade specifically, you actually want to delay your Thatcher throws a little bit more than you might think. An even bigger mistake that I see attackers making is whenever they're playing Zofia, whenever they're stunning a player, like let's say I know a player is inside of Trench right here, they will, for whatever reason, double stun that player. It's not like it's going to stun them even more if you double stun them. It's going to stun them for the exact same amount of time and the exact same amount as if you were to just throw one stun on them. So I don't know why I keep seeing Zofia players do this. Stop double stunning. It doesn't make any sense. If you're going to do it, at least delay the amount of time between your stuns. That way you're stunning them for longer. But if you're just throwing in 2 stuns like that, you're just wasting a stun for absolutely zero reason. It's not like the stun works and has double the effect if you throw 2 in there either. It's literally useless. Another gadget that people misuse is Fuse's cluster charge. Now, instead of putting down your cluster charge and immediately detonating it, you should put down the cluster charge and just wait. Now, why would you want to wait? Well, chances are if you put down the cluster charge, oh, didn't mean to do that. If you put down the cluster charge, they're going to hear the loud sound it makes, this sound right here. And they're going to know that a Fuse cluster charge is going to be going off any minute now. So they're going to run away and you're not going to get any kills with it. Instead, just wait. Oftentimes, if you wait for like 10 seconds, they'll just have a short-term memory loss moment and forget that you placed it down, or forget exactly where you placed it down. They'll get preoccupied fighting somebody else, or holding an angle, or using a piece of utility on a wall, whatever it may be. So just waiting oftentimes can get you a kill, because they'll just reposition exactly back to where they were. The second reason this works so well is because you put a fuse charge right there, you can then take that time to get into a position to where, like, let's say now I'm in the basement, I can set that fuse charge off and watch them run away, and then get a free kill as I'm watching them run. Another gadget you're using wrong is claymores. Instead of placing claymores on the flank like that, where all 3 lines are exposed, instead put the claymore actually facing whatever you're trying to use to hide it. This way, only 1 claymore line is appearing, which is a lot harder to spot than 3, so oftentimes you'll get a kill just because you placed it differently. Not only should you be turning claymores, but if you know you're not going to use your second claymore, you can always double up claymores, just like this. Now, with this method, the other 2 claymore lines won't appear, which makes it to where if they see your claymore and they shoot it, chances are when they shoot it, they're quickly going to run up because they think the claymore's gone. And the second that they shoot that claymore, this one will immediately activate and kill them, because no one is usually going to expect 2 claymores to be there, so sometimes this can get you free kills too. But that's enough about gadget tips. Let's go over some game sense tips. Let's say that you're playing as support operator. A lot of the times after the prep phase is completely done, support operators don't really know what to do. Sometimes they'll just catch themselves watching random angles, just sitting around, maybe they'll get on their phone, but you never want to be doing any of that. In Siege, you always want a purpose. And if you're a support operator, you're not really getting frags. What you should be doing is immediately getting on cameras the second the prep phase ends. Immediately getting on cameras, especially the outside cameras, will immediately alert you to wherever they're pushing. If you see there's a bunch of people pushing Parkside trying to get this wall open or getting on that door over there, then you know they're going to do a white take, which can help you know which angles to hold later. Not only this, but if you have roamers, you can tell them, hey, they're pushing here, which can allow your roamers to rotate to the necessary position to waste time. And it also makes it to where if you have roamers that are across the map not really doing anything, it makes it to where you always have roamers that are being helpful because they're not off roaming somewhere where the attackers aren't even pushing in the first place. So if you're a support player and you don't know what to do when the prep phase ends, just get on cameras. The same exact thing can be said whenever you're attacking as well. One of the most popular solo queue operators right now is Zero. One of Zero's best specialties is the fact that he can just hide cameras anywhere, which makes him very suitable for the flank watch operator role. As you can see, with just 2 cameras, I've covered every single necessary staircase for flank watch that I would need in order to push the top floor site if I were doing a display hall push. The issue with Zero a lot, especially when you're solo queuing, is if you're not watching your cameras, you can't really count on your teammates to watch them, even if they're dead. Which means if everybody is alive on your team, or even if you have some dead people, as Zero, you should just be on your cams watching flank. Unless you call out to your team and you know that they're watching your flank cameras, this is your job. You played Zero, you dug your grave, and now you gotta lay in it. If you don't like watching flank cams, you shouldn't have picked Zero, but if you did, watch his flank cams, because 9 times out of 10, your teammates won't, which makes playing Zero completely useless most of the time. But now that you've made it to the 40th tip, I'm gonna give you a really cool tip with Osa. Let's say you want to get the bomb down. One of the many hard issues with getting the bomb down if you're playing Osa is if you try to put her shield down and get the plant down at the same time, oftentimes, instead of planting, you'll accidentally pick your Osa shield up, which really sucks. If you want to negate this, a lot of players have just turned around and then planted the bomb, but then you can't see if anyone's rushing you. Instead, all you have to do is look up. Then, you're able to plant the bomb without picking your Osa shield up, but you're still able to see a little bit in front of you to know if they're rushing you so you can get off and then immediately shoot people. Moving it back to the defense, let's talk about Ela. The one thing that really does suck about Ela is that she only has 3 mines, which means that you really have to spread them out in order to get any use out of them. But that's just the thing. You don't want to spread them out. Instead, I actually recommend that you pocket 1 or honestly 2 at least of your Ela mines. Instead of viewing Ela as a trap operator, you should view Ela as kinda like Zofia, where you throw her stuns at people once you know where they're pushing. The reason you do this is, let's say that you have an Ela mine on Spiral, and you also have an Ela mine on the Visa staircase, and your final Ela mine is on the yellow staircase. Well, if they only do a vert, wall, and yellow push, only one of your Ela mines is ever going to get used, which means that your other 2 Ela mines went to complete waste. So as Ella, I actually recommend pocketing a few Ella mines, and then once you see where they're actually pushing from, then you can set your Ella mines down, so that most of your Ella mines are actually getting used throughout the round. This is further reinforced by the fact that the activation time on these Ella mines is super quick. As you can see, boom, it's activated. It almost seems like because of this that the developers intended for you to throw an Ella mine at people instead of for it to be used as a trap. Another ability that you could be using better is mute jammers. Now as you can see, when I place a mute jammer down, there's a rectangle that slowly fills up, which is called the action fill bar, and once it's fully filled, then you know the mute jammer is placed down, but this isn't actually the case. You can get away with canceling this animation and putting the mute jammer down faster than you actually would earlier. To do this, all you have to do is put down the mute jammer, and then the second that it activates and glows red, you can let go, which makes it a lot faster than if you were to just put the mute jammer and wait for the action bar to fill up. Not only are you able to cancel mute jammer animations faster, but you can do the exact same thing with Dokkaebi. It's a little bit harder to get down, but as Dokkaebi, wait for the action meter to fill up and then immediately put your gadget away. This will make it to where they'll still get called, but the animation of you putting down your tablet is a lot faster, so you can get out of that animation a lot faster. Now, let's move on to her defending counterpart, Vigil. The thing about Vigil's ability is the more you move around, the more useless his ability becomes. When someone's droning you out, if you activate your ability, they can't see you, sure, but they can definitely still hear you. So if you shoot, if you reload, if you move around and sprint around, they'll be able to hear exactly where you are, making his ability pretty much useless. Instead, as Vigil, if you know they're about to drone you, whether you hear it or you see the drone, when you activate your ability, sit perfectly still. This will make it to where they won't hear any noises that you're making, because you're not making any noises, but also the less you move, the less the little white lines on their screen appear to grow bigger and bigger, and the smaller the white lines are on the bottom of their screen on their drone, the farther and farther away in their head you are. Which means even if their drone is right in front of you, to them it looks like you could be across the map, maybe on a different floor. They won't know because you're just sitting still, which is a huge advantage for you. For this next tip, come into Cafe. What you'll do is you'll walk into this tire right here in kitchen, and then you're going to shoot off the glass of this right portion of the cabinet right here. Then align your crosshair with the bottom line, just like this, and throw your Echo Drone right. Once your Echo Drone is here, you can just drive it a little bit further in the cabinet, and now you have a hidden Echo Drone that most people won't be able to find. And if they try to go for, like, you know, the default plant here, maybe they try to go for a plant there, I mean, either way, you can just hop it out of this cabinet right here, jump it up, stun people that are planting, and get a free kill. It's a really nice hidden echo cam spot. For tip number 46, as Thorn, you actually want to be stacking her Thorn traps. What I see a lot of people doing is they'll just throw one Thorn trap like this, and the only issue with it is attackers can walk in it. Once they hear the trap activate, they're just gonna walk out, or they'll just commit and run all the way over here and they won't be affected by your trap. You never want to let them do this. Instead, put multiple traps in the same exact area. One right here, let's say like a second one behind this light right here, doesn't really matter. Hell, you could even stack 3 at a time, put one on the cinder block here, and now if they try to walk in, they'll activate this one, and then they'll leave. And then if they walk in again, they'll activate a second one. But instead of leaving, because they activated the second one, they're more likely to just commit, and then they'll activate the third one. So if they stay here, they'll die to this one. But if they leave, they'll die to this one that already got activated. So either way, they're literally dead. You set a death trap for them that will get you a free kill 9 times out of 10. So stacking your Thorn traps like these two here allows you to get free kills instead of just putting one at a time that don't really do anything except for get you information. But let's move on to the top floor. Now, Oryx's Rima Dash allows you to do a lot of things. It can allow you to make rotates. It can allow you to counter shield operators by just bashing at them. But more importantly, as Oryx, whenever you're trying to set up the site, whether it be making head holes, reinforcing, doesn't really matter. Whenever you're trying to set up the site, you want to be primarily using the Oryx dashes to get around while setting up the site to make the site set up faster. This is because as Oryx, you're going to be roaming, which means you don't really have a lot of time to set up site in the first place. So instead of using your dashes to make rotates that your bailiff can make easier without wasting your HP, save your dashes to rotate to make site setup faster so that you can go certain places to do certain things quickly to make it very, very easy for you to open up all the hatches you need, make all the head holes, make all the rotates, whatever it may be. And this can really, really help out your team and make it to where you're in position on the roam, ready to go wherever you need to be faster. Now, instead of fragging on defense, let's say you want to frag on attack. A good way to do that is ash rushing. Now, you'll notice if you try to ash rush, just like this, you'll lose a little bit of HP because you just ran into an entire breaching charge. If you don't want to lose HP though, put the breaching charge in the top left or top right of the corner of the barricade that you're running into. That way, when you run in, you won't lose any HP, but you'll still be able to run in just the exact same. Not only should you break barricades differently on attack, but you should also break them differently on defense. If you want to break a barricade 2 times to prep it so that you can run out just like this, instead of breaking the top or even the bottom of the barricade, which makes a lot of noise, what you want to do instead is shoot it out just like this, because the gunfire sound is a lot louder than the barricade breaking sound, so it'll cover it up perfectly. Once you shoot it out, then you can melee this little portion right here 2 times, which makes almost no noise that the attackers can hear. But as you can see, I still get a vault prompt to be able to run out just the same. So you're essentially running out by making a lot less noise and taking them by surprise a lot more. Moving on to my 49th tip, you want to stop over reloading. Let's say that I mag dump somebody. I'm in a gunfight with somebody. I put a bunch of bullets into them like this. You don't really need to reload here. You can just unpeek and then repeek and hold the angle. Especially with something like a DMR where you do 60 damage per shot. It only takes 2 bullets to kill somebody, or at least down them depending on their armor class or previously held HP. So if you have 8 bullets left in your magazine, there's absolutely no reason to reload. You only really want to reload if you have like maybe 4 bullets in your magazine, or if you're on an SMG or AR, maybe like 8 bullets in your magazine. You don't want to be over reloading, because if I'm mag dumping right here, as an attacker, they're just gonna wait for me to stop mag dumping and then reload, and then they're just gonna run in while I'm reloading. So minimizing the amount of times that you're reloading will make it a lot harder for attackers to have those moments that they can catch you off guard, especially because reload canceling isn't a thing, and now it puts you on 1 bullet and forces you to reload after. For tip 51, if you're using Hibana, and let's say this hatch is reinforced with a Cade on it, there's a surefire way that you can get rid of this Cade Claw all by yourself. All you have to do is put 2 Hibana pellets next to the hatch, just like this, and explode your Hibana pellets. The explosion on the other side of this wall, no matter where the Cade Claw is, will blow up the Cade Claw, and now this hatch is no longer electrified, and now you can put your Hibana pellets on the hatch just like this, and explode the hatch for free. Next, if you're ever trying to gridlock tracks off a staircase, you want to throw the gridlock tracks in the middle of the staircase exactly right here. This will give it to where there are the most amount of tracks on the staircase that the defender will have to shoot if they want to flank you in order to actually flank you. The reason that this is because if you were to throw a gridlock track, the gridlock tracks will spiral around in an exact circle from the exact point at which you threw your gridlock tracks. Meaning that if you want the most amount of gridlock tracks to spawn, you need to have the most amount of space around the center point at which you threw your gridlock tracks. And the biggest point at which the most amount of tracks will spawn is in the exact middle of a staircase. If you were instead to throw a gridlock track, let's say in the corner over here, it would only spawn a few gridlock tracks right here. It wouldn't spawn any in the corner. In fact, as you can see, it barely spawned any at all. So you want to make sure that you have gridlock tracks in the exact center of the staircase that you're using for flank watch. If you want to counter gridlock though, all you need to do is shoot the middle of the gridlock tracks where it was deployed very early on, just like this. That will stop any further tracks from deploying, which completely counters the ability. Moving it back to the defense, let's talk about this castle tip. A lot of attackers will sledge open, breaching charge open, or just knife open castle barricades. Whenever they're doing any of these 3 things, they're locked in an animation for a bit whenever the castle barricade opens. So if you see someone doing this, you can just stand in front of your castle barricade, and the second that the castle barricade is opened, you can ADS and kill them. It's pretty easy to do. Moving from advanced tips to a little bit more of the basics, one thing I want to talk about is you only ever want to quick peek if you absolutely have to. Quick peeking at its core is something that you do for information. Let's say I don't know if anybody's in con because I lost both of my drones. Instead of droning it out, I could just quick peek all of the angles that defenders could possibly be sitting in order to get information, and if I see somebody, I can then swing and pre-fire them. It's used as an information tool. But if you have a drone, you might as well not put your brain at risk and just drone it out anyways, so you only ever want to be quick peeking if it's necessary. Another basic of Siege that you should definitely know is that it takes 20 bullets to destroy a barricade. As you can see,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
So if you ever have a gun with very little ammo, like the ARX with 21 bullets, you now know exactly how many bullets it takes to mag dump in order to destroy a barricade. But it takes 5 bullets to destroy the glass of a barricade. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh wait, no, there's no glass in this. Hold on, that's embarrassing. No shot, this is a glassless map, right? Not only does it take 20 bullets to destroy a barricade, but it actually takes 5 bullets to destroy the glass on a window barricade. As you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, why did it take 4? Usually, hold on. Oh, it's because I'm double shooting because I'm on a vector. As you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the glass is broken. So if you're ever on defense and you want to know if they're rappelling outside of a window, doing this in the prep phase is a great idea. One of the many changes that came recently was that you can't cook grenades anymore, which means you can't do below nades like this common below nade that used to exist right here. What if I told you you could? All you really have to do to make it to where you can do this is shoot out the first layer of softwood in a floor just like this, and then now you can just fit a grenade in the floor right here, and the grenade is below the floor, and now you have a below nade. It's that simple. Another thing that came out recently was the shield rework. Part of the shield rework is if you aren't extended as Monty, or if you're any other shield in the game, they can't just knife your shield whenever you're on ADS to move your shield to then shoot you. It's an impossibility. Unless you're playing Clash or you're fully extended as Monty, knifing your shield does nothing, which means you get to go up close to them as much as possible to just knife them back. So my tip for you is, as a shield player, make sure you're getting as close to them as possible and just knifing them, because knifing them makes it to where you don't expose yourself, you still are able to knife them and down them and kill them just as easily, and they can't even knife you back to counter you. So it's literally uncounterable. But if you want to be more of a passive shield player, my next tip is, if you're playing a shield operator, constantly be giving callouts. As Monty, you have this huge rectangle glass on your shield that allows you to see most of your surroundings, which means that you're able to get a lot of information and call out a lot of information safely to your teammates. So if you have a teammate behind you right here on this doorway, and you as Monty are playing on this doorway and you see the Izami on R1 or on R2 or in R90, you need to be calling out, hey, he's R1 crouched, R2 standing, on the pixel, R2, he just went to R90. Giving those callouts will make it so much easier as you're standing still for your teammates to shoot the player you're giving comms on. Now, we talked about making vert with Buck earlier, but if you want to make it to where you're not shotgunning floors like this and the other side of the floor doesn't get shotgunned open and you have to, you use 2 bullets at a time, all you literally have to do is just ADS, and 9 times out of 10 that will get both layers instead of having you waste 2 different pieces of ammo on 2 different layers. See how it only gets like 1 piece of the floorboard sometimes? Like, it's just really inconsistent. So if you want to counter that, all you gotta do is just ADS, and then look how easy that was to make all of that vert. Another cool trick you can do with an attacker, Capitao, is you can create one-way smoke angles. If I shoot a smoke bolt somewhere, it's going to stick to wherever I shoot it. Now, if an attacker were to peek through that smoke, you'd be clearly able to see them when they swing. But because of the nature of how smokes work, if they were to walk into smoke, they actually can't see. Now, they can negate this by just crouching, but 9 times out of 10, if they're really trying to swing you, they're not going to crouch. They're going to swing you standing. So if you can make a one-way angle like this, they won't be able to see you, but you can still clearly see their legs and kill them for absolutely free, because a lot of people who are swinging from this don't know this. Moving into the defense, let's talk about Solus. Now, the mistake that I see Solus players making is they're not immediately running away from sight whenever they spawn in. Solus is one of the very few operators where you don't really want to be setting up sight, unless you are on the rare occasion where you're bringing a shotgun because nobody else can really make the holes in the site, then of course do that. Or if you're on a site where you need to reinforce hatches, then leave the site, but prioritize reinforcing those hatches and get some drones along the way. Really, you don't want to be setting up site too much, because the main power that comes out of Solus right now is the fact that you can make it to where they don't get to drone in the prep phase, which is absolutely overpowered. Now, earlier we talked about how breaking glass with 5 bullets can be useful if you're trying to hear them rappel, just like this. Why is the glass? But if you're trying to spawn peek, you never really want to break the glass. Instead, just shoot the side of the wooden barricade right here. This makes it to where you can still see when you're spawn peeking, but the glass isn't broken. And because the glass isn't broken, to the unsuspecting attacker eye, this doesn't really look like anyone's spawn peeking. As opposed to if the glass was broken, which is way more obvious that a spawn peek is occurring, especially in comparison to a window like this where the glass is still intact. For my next tip, you want to make sure that you're never exposing yourself to too many angles. If I'm a defender or an attacker that's trying to safeguard the bomb that's been planted, I never want to position myself in a way where I'm exposed to more than one, maybe two doorways. Right now, I'm exposed to dirt, I'm exposed to main stairs, I'm exposed to the church door, and I'm exposed to the blue door. That's really bad, because if I hold one angle, that means in 3 other places, defenders, or attackers, I guess, can shoot me from places I wouldn't expect. As opposed to me sitting in this corner, where I'm only exposed to the blue door that I'm easily able to hold. I have a sound call for dirt that I can swing off of, and I have a sound call for the dummies door that I can also easily swing off of. Additionally as well, you can sit behind this box if you're defending and only peek dirt, and not dirt in the blue door, where you'll get shot in the back from the oil pit hallway. Just making sure that you're only exposing yourself to the angle that you're peeking so that you don't get shot in the back is crucial when playing Siege. Now, we talked about Ying being counterable easily through just shooting her candelas, but it's a lot harder to shoot her candelas when they're coming from above you, which is my next tip. As Ying, you can just put her candelas through soft surfaces like this, and the blind will come out the other side, which is a lot harder for anybody to counter if you're trying to make your Ying candelas a little more uncounterable. Now, one of the biggest counters to Izami is that you can just go up to her barricade and knife it 3 times, and it's just destroyed. So, as Izami, if you're playing in a position like this, and you don't want to be exposed to something like that window, instead of putting an Izami barricade just on the window where they can easily knife it from the rappel, put an Izami barricade closer to you, like maybe on the actual wall next to you, or somewhere on this foosball table, where they can't knife it, and they have to shoot it. Them shooting it gives you a huge warning that you can use to swing off of it and kill them as they're shooting your barricade or after they start reloading. So, it's a lot safer to do this than just randomly barricading a window. Now, earlier, we talked about how with Flores you can go through these AC ducts to Flores drone at a playable shield right here. Now the issue with that is if they know it's coming, they're just going to shoot your Flores drones. To counter this, if you want to Flores drone a shield and them not shoot your drones, you need to start deploying them mid-air. The thing about Flores drones is whenever you activate them for them to explode, they immediately just stop in their tracks, and there's nothing that you can do about them. However, if you jump at something and deploy it mid-air, it will still keep traveling in the air even after it has already started the explosion process, which means it gets a little bit more of travel time, and a bulletproof travel time at that, before it hits its target. Which means if you want to destroy that shield, all you have to do is jump and deploy it, and it goes in a little bit of an extra distance to get that shield, which makes it a little bit easier for you to destroy any bulletproof utility you want to get with Flores. Now that we're on coastline though, let's talk about Osa. Because as Osa, if you upside down rappel in a window and deploy your shield just like this, not only on coastline but on other maps, you're able to get pixel angles using this Osa shield and some natural cover, like for instance this couch and hookah, to get pixel angles onto anybody inside of this site. Moving on to defense for a second, I want to talk about feet holes. Now the issue with feet holes is a lot of time if you're holding feet holes as a defender, an attacker can just crouch and see a lot of your legs whenever you're holding these feet holes, so sometimes they don't even work as intended. To get around this, instead of making feet holes that are about this high, which again they can see through, you want only really half of your crosshair shooting the wall so that the feet holes appear at least a little bit lower when you're making them. These are a lot easier to see when you're crouched for an attacker who wants to contest VIP than these, where they can't see at all unless they prone. So just make feet holes a bit shorter by only using half of your crosshair, and your legs won't get blown off and they'll thank me later. Something else you should break on defense is hatches, specifically if you're playing Maestro, because one of the main weaknesses of Maestro is that attackers can just go up and knife his cameras, just like that. But if you destroy the hatch right here, they can't knife the cameras, because then they'll just fall down the hatch, right? So now your Maestro camera is completely protected from that one counter. Now we talked about how you might be using claymores wrong on flanks, but another great use of claymores is putting them in drone holes. Now there's many examples of this throughout a multitude of different maps. But the claymore I just showed you makes it to where if you have anybody who's standing right here, maybe trying to turbo out trick the wall, K-trick the wall, whatever it may be, and they want to rotate back, they'll die to a claymore through this drone hole. So it's really nice to have sometimes. We've talked a lot about recent changes that have happened in the game, and somebody else who's gotten changed recently would be Legion. Now, as you see, when you deploy a Legion mine, there is a radius of effect, which means if anybody steps in that radius of effect, they will get the Legion mine. They don't have to actually be standing on top of it anymore, which means if you want to put a Legion mine for a doorway, don't just put it in the center. yeah, it'll work, but it'll probably be seen and shot because it's not invisible anymore. Instead, put it on the side of a doorway like this, because no matter what part of the doorway they enter, most people have a lot of mass on them, aka two legs that are very spread wide, which means even if they hug this side of the doorway, they're still gonna hit these lesion mines. So you'll still be able to hit them even if you have it on the side of the doorway. Now let's bring you back to Bank, where I'm playing Mira again. Well, the tip with Mira this time is you never want to peek your Miras. And I mean like literally ever. There's no reason to ever peek your Miras. If they have this wall open, you don't need to peek your Mira. If they have this wall open or they're on this door, there's no reason to peek your Mira. Because if I'm an attacker, a lot of the times I'm just going to sit and pre-fire and hope that the Mira peeks me. But if the Mira never peeks me, I'll never kill the Mira, which means that I'll never be able to stop her from nitroing my plant. And even when you nitro a plant, you don't even need to peek your Mira in order to get that nitro off that denies the plant in the first place. So at no point in time should you really ever be peeking your Miras if you want to waste as much time as possible. Now something that got added literally this season was Deimos, and if you want to counter Deimos, you can easily just sit inside of a Turbo freeze. Now this does come with its own debuffs, but if you're inside of the Turbo freeze, the drone can't track you. So if you're being tracked by a Deimos as Turbo, or if you're a teammate with a Turbo, all you gotta do is put a canister down in the middle of both of you, and neither of you can get tracked. It's really powerful. But now that we're on the topic of Deimos, let's talk about some more counters for Deimos. The second operator that counters Deimos is Vigil. As long as you have Vigil's ability active, the Deimos helicopter cannot track you. The final Deimos counter that I'll go over is Mute. As long as you're standing in a mute jammer, Deimos can't track you. Now the unfortunate part is you also can't track Deimos, but I'd much rather neither of us be able to track each other than him be able to track me, because his tracking is way more accurate than mine. The next tip that I have for you is you need to be ADSing more. Too often do I see people wide swinging un-ADS'd and then they're just not ready for the gunfight. And with the nerf of ADS speed across all weapons and scopes, it makes it to where you really can never be un-ADS'd. I don't know why I see people wide swinging ADS. Like, I'd understand if you were quick peeking, but people wide swing and then ADS to kill people because they think that they're like a really good player when they're doing this on Warden, but it just makes you look dumb because you die when you're doing it. So if you're ever going to quick peek or literally wide swing anything, always be ADS'd unless you have info that nobody is there. Something that you probably do too much though is droning on Jackal. Let's say that I want to drone into Small Tower to clear out all of Small Tower to roam clear for the basement site. I don't need to drone out all of top Small Tower, then this part of Small Tower, then bottom Small Tower, then the Small Tower corner, then dining, then shower hall. I don't need to drone out all of that. I only need to drone out the initial room that I'll be hopping into, which is this top Small Tower room right here. Then, once I'm in here, I can just activate my footprint scanner. If I see there's no footprints in this area, then I know my left is clear. Otherwise, there'd be footprints leading to the left. Then, if I peek here and I see no footprints, you know, like anywhere on this door, then I know no one is close to me in Small Tower. Otherwise, you'd see footprints leading to there. If I know that there's no footprints, let's say in the shower hall, right over here, then I know no one's in shower, because there'd be footprints leading into shower. So you get the idea. You don't really need to drone that much on Jackal. The same exact thing can be said for Dokkaebi as well, but to even a greater extent. You don't need to drone out this room and the room below and shower hall and dining if you're playing Dokkaebi. Again, all you have to do is drone out this initial room. Then you can stand here and call right here. And if you don't hear any phones ringing, then you know this is clear. You know all of Small Tower is clear. You know the hallway is clear. You know shower is clear. You know dining is clear. You know the 90 shower hall is clear. You know kitchen is clear. You know all of this is clear with one phone call. And you didn't need to drone any of it because you just used the ability. So stop over droning on Jackal, stop over droning on Dokkaebi. Now earlier we talked about how if you're behind a mirror, you can literally just prone and throw a nitro cell from absolute safety. But if you're going to throw a nitro cell, I actually recommend that you delay throwing it after you rip it with this ripping sound right here. That's because attackers can loudly hear that ripping sound too, which means that if they hear you rip your nitro cell, they're gonna run away, and then your nitro cell was completely useless. So I'd rip it, wait for them to run away, then wait for them to come back, and now, if they want to come back and try to plant, you won't make the ripping sound again, because the nitro's already in your hand, which means you can just throw the nitro cell, and they won't hear it being ripped, which means they'll have less time to react, and you're more likely to get a kill this way. Something else that's crucial to getting more kills is turning down your graphic settings. Now, because I'm recording and I want my video to look good, I have all of my settings on Ultra, but typically I have all of my settings on low. Now, if you look at this meter in the bottom right here, it tells you the exact amount of megabytes of VRAM that your graphics card is having to work in order to make your game run. And the higher your graphic settings are overall, the more and more it's going to have to work. As you can see when I put it on low, look at how low the bar is. This is how little it's having to work. The less work your PC is doing, the better your game is going to look consistently, which can consistently get you more kills. Next, I want to talk about repelling. Now, the tip here is that you never want to peek somebody who is upside down repelled on a window as a defender. As a defender, the reason you never want to do this is because let's pretend this 0 camera right here is the head of a player, and the bottom of the bookshelf is the feet of a player. If I'm upside down repelled, I can see the feet of the player, but I can't see the head of the player. And if I can't see their head, that means their head typically can't see me, which means they can't see me, but I can still see their feet, which means I know exactly where they are and I can shoot them, but they have no idea where I am. Which means that upside down repelling gets you a natural advantage that they can't see, which means if you're a defender, never peek an upside down repel. Now earlier we talked about all of the counters to Deimos, so why don't I give you a few tips with Deimos to make him seem a bit more powerful? Well, the first thing that I want to go over is that you need to be wall banging and floor banging as much as possible with Deimos, because as you can see, he has a very high caliber revolver, meaning that he can easily shoot through soft walls with 1 bullet each with ease. This means that if you're tracking somebody and you see their ping, behind a wall or above a floor, you should be prioritizing getting wall bang kills because it's much easier for you to wall bang people with pings than it is for them to wall bang you due to the fact that your caliber of bullet typically is higher than the defender's. My second tip with Deimos is you want to be moving around as much as possible. Let's say that you do end up pinging a defender. Well, like I said earlier, that defender also has pings on you, but it's only every second. It's not a continuous ping like you get on them, which means if you're constantly moving around, it'll be very, very hard for them to wallbang you or shoot you or pre-fire you because the pings they're getting on you keep changing every 5 seconds, so they don't know where you'll pop out and shoot them from next. Now, moving off of Deimos, let's talk about a different operator, which is Frost. Now, my tip with Frost is you need to make sure that you're playing off of her frost mats. So let's say you have a frost mat here and maybe a frost mat below this window and this window, or at least somewhere in the piano area. It would make sense for you and maybe even a shield setup to be next to those frost mats due to the fact that Frost got nerfed and now anybody can revive herself out of her frost mats. But if you're playing next to your frost mats and someone gets downed in those frost mats, you can easily just finish them off without them having the opportunity to revive themselves. So always make sure that you're playing off of your frost mats, or at least as close as safely possible to your frost mats. Moving on from primary gadgets, let's talk about secondary gadgets, the first of which being observation blockers. Now, you never want to put observation blockers just in front of drone holes like this. This might seem like a good idea due to the fact that they won't be able to drone through the drone hole, but that's just the thing. They're just going to drone through the drone hole and pass your observation blocker immediately, and due to the fact that this drone is outside, you're not really going to have time to react to the drone before it crosses through the drone hole unless you're prone right here. But if you're doing that, you're going to get shot from the rappel, so you're not really going to do that, which means this observation blocker is completely useless. Instead, find observation blockers like, let's say, this one right here. If you're playing top red, then once they drone through the drone hole, they won't be able to see you top red. But because it's so far away from the drone hole, it gives you time to react and shoot the drone as it's driving up, so they won't have information on where you're playing. For my next tip, a part of Maverick's kit is the fact that he's pretty silent at what he does, and that's not just limited to getting walls open. He also is great at silently getting barricades open too, just like this. Now, you're able to walk through this barricade, and because nobody ever heard you break the barricade with your melee, they won't know that you're coming into kitchen, so they won't blow up their nitro cell, they won't swing you from the door, and it allows you to be a lot more sneaky than you normally could had you have just made a ton of noise by knifing the barricade. Next, let's bring it back to the talk of Valkyrie. One thing about Valkyrie is people prioritize seeing things more than hearing things, which is really, really bad. If I want a camera that gives information on the display hallway, because I'm playing on the top floor, putting a camera, let's say all the way up here, is a great idea. Now, yeah, this camera might not see any of the display hallway, and honestly, it doesn't see much, but it gives an audio call onto anybody in the hallway, which is good enough because then you can relay that information to your teammates if you're a good teammate and you're using a mic. If you're not, you really shouldn't be on Valkyrie anyways, but if you are, then sound call cameras that will never be found are even better than cameras that can see a bunch of things that will be found. Because if I'm an attacker and I'm swinging this doorway, the last place I'm going to put my crosshair is all the way up here. That is a death wish. So this Valkyrie camera provides the same information as one that would get found, and it gets attackers killed a lot too. So start making sound cameras and not visual cameras. Speaking of information operators, let's talk about Twitch. A lot of people don't know this, but Twitch's drones have infinite range. I can get this default camera that's all the way over there from a completely different spawn, as you can see. So you never really need to go up close and personal and risk getting your Twitch drone shot to shoot things when the Twitch drone has infinite range in the first place. One thing I see a lot of players struggling with is aiming head level, but for this tip, all you have to do is barricade something like this, and then unbarricade it. So now, if you know that you're going to be holding an angle from, let's say right here, or let's say right here, all you need to do is make sure that your crosshair is in line with these little buckles on the barricade, and now you know exactly where head level is at all times, so you have no excuse to not be aiming head level if you just do this trick everywhere you go. My next tip is if you're playing Glaz, you need to make sure that you're running the suppressor, and that's because as Glaz, whenever you're playing Glaz, typically you play through a smoke grenade. And if you have the suppressor on, it makes it so where you don't make bullet trails whenever you shoot things. So the defenders won't get an indicator on where the bullets are coming from on their HUD. Which means if they're trying to pre-fire you through the smoke, it makes it a lot harder and they really just have to guess instead of being able to follow your bullet tracers that don't exist because you're running the suppressor. Now when you're playing Cade, one of your biggest counters is a Thatcher. So if Thatcher is banned, naturally they have to run EMP grenades to counter you. But if you throw below Cade claws just like this, it makes it a lot harder for the impact radius of those EMP grenades to actually get those Cade claws. So if Thatcher is banned, below Cade claws are just going to be your best friend. Now an operator I haven't really talked about much is Thunderbird. Now as Thunderbird, you actually want to be putting your Thunderbird stations away from where your teammates are rotating, which might sound like is something that you shouldn't do, but let me just explain. As Thunderbird, a lot of the times, especially if you're on console where people don't hit headshots as often, you have a lot of low HP teammates, and the lower HP the teammate, the more priority that they get to have over a Thunderbird station. Like if I am at 99 HP, I don't need to take a heal, but somebody at 60 HP definitely needs to heal more than me. The issue arises whenever you have a Thunderbird station like this one, which is close to where a lot of people rotate, which is, you know, next to the store. People rotate through the store a lot. If I'm a 99 HP defender, I'm going to rotate through this doorway just because I have to, which will make it to where I accidentally snipe this heal station from my teammate who might need it more, which could be the difference between him getting healed and living and him, you know, dying. So make sure that you place Kuna stations out the way of where you're rotating so that the people who need the heals most actually have to go get it and you don't accidentally steal it from them. Now, someone who's a bit more new to the game is Turbo, and a lot of people don't know how to Turbo trick correctly with Turbo because they don't know how long their gadget lasts. Well, I'll tell you, it's 12 seconds. Once you throw a Turbo canister on a wall, all you have to do is look at the timer on the top of your screen, which you can't funnily enough see right now, and wait 12 seconds. Once that 12 seconds is up and the Turbo canister starts to thaw, that's when you'd whip out your other Turbo canister and throw it on the wall. So now you know. If you want to play someone a bit more fast-paced, then this Oryx tip will help you out a lot. As Oryx, make sure that if you're ever going to go up a hatch to flank somebody, that you break these hatches in the prep phase. Now with my tip earlier to help you quickly break hatches with 1 to 2 bullets, this should be pretty easy to do. And you want to make sure that you're always doing this in the prep phase, because as you can hear, breaking hatches makes a lot of noise. That made a lot of noise, and if you're trying to flank somebody after doing that, they're gonna know you're flanking. So make sure that you break all of the hatches that, you know, you're allowed to break in the prep phase, and not during the action phase when you're trying to flank, so that you can be a little bit more sneaky when you're flanking as Oryx. Moving back to Oregon though, let's go over this Thorn tip that is pretty underrated. Thorn has the Uzi 5kg, which means that it is a high caliber 50 cal SMG, which is pretty crazy to think about. It's like you have an automatic deagle in your hands. Because of this, it makes it to where you can do soft destruction very, very easily, and you want to abuse that by breaking open the first layer of a floor and then putting a thorn trap inside of the floor just like that. Now, this being inside of the floor makes it so where if they walk in, whenever they see the thorn trap indicator, they're going to look around. They're never going to check the floor. And as long as you have barbed wire, you know, in here, or at least something to slow them down, they won't be able to walk away enough and prone to where the thorn trap won't actually hurt them. So you can get a lot of free kills by just putting thorn traps in the floor. Now, Thorn doesn't just bring traps. She also brings a deployable shield. Now, you never typically want to put a deployable shield flush with a wall. You always want to give it at least a little bit of room away from the wall, kinda like this. Giving it room away from the wall allows you to be able to peek the other side of the deployable shield. And if you put it even closer to the wall, but again, not quite on the wall, you can get crazy tight angles so that whenever they expect you to peek the left or above the deployable shield, they'll never expect you to peek the right, and you can get some free kills this way. Not only should you never have your deployable shield flush with a wall, but you should also never have it flush with a doorway just like this. This makes it to where if anyone wants to rotate through this doorway, they have to vault over the deployable shield, which makes noise, slows them down, locks them in an animation, and can get them killed. It also makes it to where if you want to have ADSs in front of this deployable shield, you can't, unless you want to put it right here, but they're just going to easily shoot that. Instead, you want to back the shield up to about, let's say, right here, and then that makes it to where you can still use the door as intended without having to vault over a shield, but also you can put ADSs in front of the shield that are unable to be shot by attackers on any of the doorways, walls, or windows. For my final 101st tip, check out this next video. My name's Alka, and I hope I'll see you there. Later.